Please rise as we welcome in the confirmation class of 5782-2022.
Please be seated. Chag Sameach, and welcome to our confirmation service. Today, June 4th, 2022, the 6th Sivan 5782, we celebrate the festival of Shavuot. Shavuot marks the spring harvest in the land of Israel, and it commemorates the anniversary of giving the Torah by God to our ancestors at Mount Sinai. Tonight, on this bima, with the confirmation class representing our ancestors, we relive that moment as we reflect on our own Jewish identities and family stories. When my uncle went to Hebrew school at Temple Emanu-El, his teachers noticed that he couldn't separate his passion for sports from his weekly time studying Hebrew and Jewish history. The question that I've heard repeated many times was, "Johnny, you're going to have to choose whether to be a jock or a Jew. Which one is it?" Now, I've never heard the rest of the story, or at least each time I remember it being told, the laughs that ricocheted back at the teller were enough to satisfy everyone. No one ever asked what he chose. Knowing my grandparents, I'm sure the conversation that followed this famous question was less humorous. As Jews and as parents, they understood the importance of exploring and discovering religious identity as well as individual pursuits. This confirmation class has allowed me and each of my classmates to learn about Judaism and sacred texts, about Jewish history and how to be Jewish scholars. But in my opinion, the most important of all has been the way that this class encouraged us to question seriously how Judaism fits, along with all of our other pursuits, into each of our identities, individual beliefs, and daily routines. And how Judaism will mold our identities as we grow into Jewish adults. As a class, we would like to thank Temple Emanu-El for helping us to realize that we do not need to choose which one, but instead we can each create our own Jewish experiences and formulate our own Jewish identities.
It has been said, "You shall keep the flame burning on the altar continually. It shall not go out."
In this spirit, would we keep alive within us the flame of hope and faith?
And in this spirit, we kindle the Yom Tov lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehalit ner shel Yom Tov.
Hello and good evening. Sorry. My name is Lena Davidson, and I'm here to talk to you about my Jewish identity. Here's a bit about myself. I'm the daughter of Rabbi Davidson and Cantor Davidson, who works at Westchester Reformed Temple, So, as you might infer, I live in a somewhat Jewish household. But that is to oversimplify it. When I think of Judaism, I hear the strumming of a guitar and the feel of the sun flickering warmly across my face. I hear the violin and the piano, the organ and the drums. My family is sprinkled with musicians. Our holiday dinners are always filled with the sound of voices trained for whatever they might take on. I myself deeply enjoy music. I grew up playing or attempting to play classical piano, but took a liking to the violin instead. Then the violin did not work out, so I play guitar, the remainder of my piano abilities, and sing. My mother has always inspired me in that way. At her temple, I would attend a program called Sharing Shabbat each Saturday and sit in the front left row where the sun hit most brightly. My mother led those services, and my sister and I would attend. When I think of Judaism, I think of those moments in the sunlit room, my family beside and before me. It is that I remember when I'm stuck, unsure, when my feet cannot find proper ground. Later, my father began bringing us to the services at Temple Emanu-El. I found my Judaism in their music as well. My bat mitzvah was here at Temple Emanu-El. I remember looking out at the people before me as I am now, also wearing the same dress. I had spent years, practicing for my bat mitzvah. It had been pushed back for over a year because of the pandemic. I had learned more than one portion, and in turn, ended up doing a combination of the two. Standing here, up on the bima, I feel my Judaism. Hearing my mother and Cantor Glasman sing, I felt my Judaism. I do not know what is so enticing about music. Maybe it is the hum of notes against fingers or bows, or maybe it is the rhythm. Sometimes when I walk to school, listening to music, I try to match my steps to the rhythm of the song playing. That does not normally work out too well for me because I tend to enjoy my slower walks. I strive to march through life like the beat of a drum, the noise ricocheting through me and those around me. I feel as though music truly captures life, the way some songs are predictable and others are not, and what of the content of the piece. Jewish music has always fascinated me. When I was younger, I studied Jewish music more attentively. I asked my teacher, "Why is everything so sad?" She responded that that's how the music normally sounded. I love it more now than I did then. There's something so warming about music that makes you shiver. This is all to say that my connection to Judaism is through music and the feelings that devour you with a single note. It is the history of our people that one hears through its melodies.
Throughout my life, I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time at Temple Emanu-El. I went to preschool at the Temple Emanu-El Nursery School, I attended the Hebrew school from pre-K to 8th grade, and now I am now a member of the A-Team, Confirmation, the Teen Philanthropic Committee, and a variety of other teen groups. Throughout the many years that I attended Hebrew school, I began to become increasingly comfortable and proud of my Jewish identity. I began to discover the importance of that identity and the community that I am a part of. Now, as an A-teamer who gets to assist in the Hebrew school, I am once again able to enjoy these seemingly simple lessons in Hebrew and Jewish identity, but with a new outlook and drawing on my previous experience. When helping to lead activities in Hebrew school, I often find myself reminding the younger students, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders, of the importance of absorbing what is being taught and said around them. I've discovered that when giving these reminders, I am reflecting on my own experience as a student. I have now begun to understand the impact that my time at Emanu-El has had on me. When sitting in on these classes and reflecting on the lessons that I was once taught, I am reminded of their meaning and why they have stuck with me throughout these intermediate years. When listening in on Hebrew School Tefillah classes, I am given the opportunity and time to reconsider what each Jewish prayer means to me and to think beyond the words that I was taught as a middle schooler. This time allows me to think outside of the framework that the words provide and deeper into their relevance in my life today. The time that I've recently spent relearning simple Jewish values has enhanced the importance of Judaism in my daily practices. As I am an active member of a variety of service-related initiatives, I often wonder where my desire to serve others stems from. In the fall, when I was collecting tzedakah from a kindergarten Hebrew school classroom, I was tasked with explaining to the kids why, as a member of the Jewish community, it is important for us to give tzedakah when we are able to. I proceeded to explain that tzedakah is the Jewish obligation, or mitzvah, of giving to charity as well as supporting social justice. I expressed that giving tzedakah is one of the most important commandments for the Jewish people, and that the importance of tzedakah does not lie in what you donate, but rather your inclination to do so freely, without force. Although I am sure that this lesson flew over the heads of many pre-K kindergartners, it allowed me the opportunity to remind myself why I became interested in devoting my time to service and the importance of service in Judaism. This experience, among others, has allowed me to recall the memories of my time at the Hebrew school and reinvigorate my enthusiasm to continue devoting myself to Judaism. When discussing with the kindergartners, I remembered my early days of discovering my Jewish identity. I began to think about the weeks when my dad would drop me and my sister off at our classrooms and remind us of the importance of putting our small contributions into the tzedakah box. These simple lessons have served as pillars in recent years, and they are what inclined me to continue teaching and sharing important Jewish values. The time that I've spent building my Jewish identity provides a lens through which I view the world and interpret my everyday experiences. Although this particular memory has little to do with my religious identity, it parallels my fond memories of Hebrew classes and the respective time I devoted to understanding and learning religious practices. Each of these lessons that were taught to me has shaped my viewpoint and perspective and has allowed me to fully embrace my Jewish identity, both spiritually and culturally.
What is a Jewish identity? For me, Judaism is about your personal relationship with God and the Jewish community. But is it observing all the major holidays, getting a mitzvah? I believe the answer is far more complex. But before one can talk about the Jewish identity, they need to go back to when Jewish identity first became a concept. Being Jewish and having a Jewish identity were virtually one and the same until the Enlightenment began to redefine what it meant to be Jewish. This is where I posed my first question on my way to discovering my own Jewish identity. Is being Jewish believing in God? At first, I thought so, because I considered Judaism to be at its heart a religion and nothing more, and since I believed in God, that made me Jewish. I held this belief until further study brought me back to the Enlightenment. One of the great thinkers of this age, and arguably the most well-known Jewish philosopher of the time, was Baruch Spinoza. The thing was, Spinoza rejected the Jewish understanding of God, believing in pantheism, or that the world was not created by God but is only a part of God. Yet, he is still considered Jewish. This led me to my first conclusion: Judaism is far more than just a religion. My next line of thought was, what if Judaism was more than just a religion? When I think of my personal experience with Judaism, I picture my family lighting Shabbat candles. We all stand around our table, sometimes barely getting home on time. My mom takes a match and lights one candle and then the other as she says the prayer. At the end, the rest of us say Amen and resume our daily lives. I love this moment, how, for a moment, everything in our usually hectic house is calm, almost serene. Another memory that comes to mind is spending my Sunday mornings working with the A-team, to help with religious school. Me and a group of other teams, some of which I see here up with me today, get together to make the journeys of those who come after us as meaningful, happy, and customized as possible. I think both of these are part of my Jewish identity, doing my best to observe Jewish tradition and uphold the Jewish values we'd spend teaching kids every week, things like tzedakah or loving kindness. To me, they show that Judaism is a hybrid. It is a cultural identity, like lighting Shabbat candles or fasting on Yom Kippur. It's eating hamantash and partaking in other Jewish traditions. It can be believing in God or some higher power. It can be practicing Jewish values like tzedakah. Maybe it's all of these. Maybe it's a few. Maybe it's most. But the most important part, in my opinion, is that it's a choice everyone makes for themselves. In researching in preparation for this sermon, I realized that every source I looked at came to one common conclusion. It's up to each and every one of us to decide what makes us Jewish, by ourselves. I think that's the real beauty of Judaism. It's one of the oldest religions out there, and yet it's still unique and vibrant. It's able to change and yet still retain its core messages.
We invite you to rise as you are able.
La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Please join us as we sing together. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
How deep is your love for us? You've inspired the ancient authors to write of your greatness. You gave us your 613 commandments so that we celebrate your gift of Torah. We wrap ourselves in a 4-cornered tallit and attach 4 tzitzit to remind ourselves of your laws. We want to fill in on our arms to remind us that you, the one true God, brought us out of Egypt. We keep your laws on our heads and between our eyes so that our minds shall not go astray from the law you gave us at Sinai. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves the people of Israel.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher nochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinamtam levanecha ve'dibarta bam be'shivtecha beveitecha uvletecha vadere u'shokbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leo al yadecha ve'hayu latotafo bein einecha uftaftam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asistem et kol mitzvotai ve'item kidoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzei echem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אליך, אוסף אליך. מלכותך ובניך בוקע ים לפני משה מרים, זה לי ענו ואמרו. מי כמוך באלים אדוני. Please rise for the Amida. Na 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 Adonai. Ana na 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 sfatai tiftach. Ana na 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 ufi yagid tehilatecha. Please join us. Ana na 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 Adonai. Ana na 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 sfatai tiftach. Ana na 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 ufi yagid tehilatecha. Ana na 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 Adonai. Ana na 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 sfatai tiftach. Ana na 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 ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chatadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah.
Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol HaTorah le'oshia, Mechalkel Chaim be'chesed, Mechayei HaKol be'rachamim rabim, Tzomech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech mimit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hakol. Please be seated.
Today we reflect on all that confirmation has taught us through our individual paths in Jewish discovery. I'm truly thankful to Temple Emanu-El for giving me the opportunity to participate in confirmation. During COVID, these past few years have been a difficult time for everyone. Whether we lost a loved one or gained a little one, we have had to adjust and face the challenges God placed in front of us. One thing I learned about our time in COVID was that life can be pretty unpredictable, and we need to be prepared for the obstacles that come our way, especially when they're unexpected. Through my journey as a Jewish individual, confirmation classes taught me to approach the unexpected with curiosity, compassion, kindness, and courage. I'm also thankful to have gained a deeper understanding of the Jewish value system. This system of teachings has not only helped me to achieve a deeper knowledge of self and my own values, but it has helped my moral compass to grow and strive as I rely on the tools I've gained from Temple Emanu-El to help me face the obstacles that come my way every day. My journey as a Jewish individual is ongoing, and I look forward to discovering how my path helps me to fulfill my goals to the fullest as a Jewish adult.
A motif of many Jewish prayers is peace, something that I believe we take for granted in our very busy lives. While we walk to school, run to catch a bus, or even fall asleep on the subways, we often forget that we have the privilege of doing so. Even if sleeping on the subway is not something we all want or like to do, we still are able to do it with relative peace of mind. While we doze off on any form of public transportation, we often forget about how some people are awake, fighting for their lives, beliefs, or often both. Take, for example, the conflict currently happening in Ukraine. In certain parts, children and adults alike are not able to commute to school or to work. They are faced with a much more daunting task, staying alive and saving others. I would urge everyone to reflect about how lucky we are to at least be able to use certain resources not available to others living in unfortunate conditions. Another common theme that goes along with peace is persistence. Despite the challenges brought upon those who live less fortunately, they are able to persevere and bounce back from their setbacks. They often solve one problem at a time in order to move forward to solve the next. Eventually, when enough problems are solved, peace is achieved. When you may feel like you have a lot of work ahead of you, think of the work as steps instead of a wall in your life. It is much easier to reach the top of a staircase than the top of a wall. It is with this mentality that people achieve peace even in the harshest of conditions. I believe that it is of great importance that we gather to pray for peace for not only Ukrainians, but for those in other areas of conflict.
As we gather here tonight, we reflect on the past, the people we have gained and lost, the memories we have made, and the people involved in them. We also notice how healing and pain can come in multiple ways. People in pain desire and need help regardless of whether that pain is emotional or physical. Throughout the pandemic, we've all noticed how so many individuals have been affected, through people becoming ill, losing loved ones, or feeling increased stress levels. However, throughout it all, we found ways of coping. For me personally, and I know for many others in this room, Judaism has been a leading factor in healing those injuries. Regardless of the way we practice it, we can all find some peace within it. However we choose to interpret God and Jewish practice, we can all find in them some measure of serenity. Personally, I recall my short nightly prayers. While different from the traditional evening prayer, I was able to find my own peace in these simple conversations with myself. Talking about the state of my family, friends, community, school, and more have helped me in my journey of realizing and highlighting the more positive aspects of life. Tonight, I hope that we can all find serenity in our praying for healing, one that can be about reflecting on loss or hardship, or simply taking a moment to heal old and new scars that many of us share. And if there are others you are thinking of who need healing and strength, please share their names aloud at this time.
Mekor habracha lamotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us
Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirachim oteinu Bekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
As we have said many prayers together as a congregation, I now invite you to pray silently. During this time, I encourage you to think about your family, friends, pets, and anyone else who is important to you. I encourage you to pray for those around the world less fortunate than you. However, I also encourage you to pray for yourself, your well-being, and your health, because as Hillel said, if I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? We pray silently.
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen. We invite you to clap your hands and sing with us. Here we go. Ya la 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 ya la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la la. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן.
Growing up, religion had always been an important part of my life that my parents prioritized among me and my siblings. When I was younger, I went to Hebrew school and services on the high holidays, but never really had a grasp on the personal meaning of what being a Jew meant to my identity. This changed when I started preparing for my bat mitzvah. Studying my Parsha and learning about the core Jewish values forced me to connect on a personal level with my religion and reflect on how it had a crucial part in my life. While preparing for my bat mitzvah, my grandfather got very sick and not much later passed away. This was a very hard time for me and my family and was a time when I turned to the congregation and my Jewish roots. My grandfather had partaken and fulfilled the core Jewish values that I had studied for my bat mitzvah. He dedicated his career to helping others through medicine, using his passion for repairing the world through Tikkun Olam. Richard was an incredible father and grandfather, and the way he was committed to his family and work inspired me to continue to prioritize these values throughout my Jewish adult life. This was a wake-up call for me to start being more aware of the community I was a part of and the responsibilities that were important for me to uphold as a young Jewish woman. I wanted to use something I was passionate about to fulfill these responsibilities, just like he had done. I've always loved working with younger kids, teaching them, and being a mentor. Since my bat mitzvah, I've been continuing to use this passion for the greater good through volunteering and giving back. An example of this is my working for the A-Team here at Temple Emanu-El. The A-Team is a group of high schoolers who come back to Temple every Monday to help out with the religious school. We do hands-on projects with the kids, develop lesson plans, and help out around the office. Being on the A-Team had an enormous impact on my participation within this community, as well as helped me develop a better understanding of core Jewish concepts, and I have also met some of my closest friends through this program. Confirmation over the past year has helped me with my job at the A-Team and has allowed me to take what I learned from my classes and instill what we are taught about to the kids I work with in Hebrew school. I'm so proud and grateful to be a part of this community, and I cannot wait to continue this journey of discovering my Jewish identity with those in the community who I've met through confirmation class, as well as my many other friends within this congregation. Thank you.
Being Jewish has been a relevant part of my life since I was a young kid. I remember walking into our synagogue as a young boy, getting ready for whatever religious holiday it was. At first, I saw coming for services as a pain and a hassle, but now, as times have changed and I have grown as a person, I find the experience very enjoyable. Nowadays, I am prepared for services and ready to learn when I come into Hebrew school, but it was not always like this. Growing up in a Jewish household, I was always supported by my family in every decision I made. And as I have grown older, they encouraged me to get more involved in my community and lean on them for support. This started with my days as a little kid in my early years at Hebrew school. I learned a little about the Hebrew language, the history of the Torah, and the prayers and stories inside it. In this community, we had our history of the Torah, our own takes on the prayers, looking at them from different perspectives and interpreting them differently. This helped me look more into the history and principles of Judaism as I grew older. As I grew up and learned more about the Torah, I started to get ready for my bar mitzvah, but at the same time, I was in the mitzvah corps program at Hebrew school. In the mitzvah corps, we learned about all types of Jewish principles and good deeds for the community. During this program, we volunteered at multiple places, whether it was a food kitchen or mentoring. We learned how to use our Jewish principles to help others, no matter their person's chosen faith. Initially, when I started to go to Hebrew school on the weekends, I was not a fan, as I already had to go to school during the rest of the week. I was tired of learning, but the more I went to Hebrew school and the older I got, the more I saw the value of it. As well as learning about the Hebrew language and Jewish history, I was taught the values of our religion as a person. The lessons we learned were much more interactive and focused on the values we had learned previously. After this, I was soon able to apply these important values I had learned to my life. Learning about my religion has made me more aware of what's going on in my community and around the world. While there may be some stigma about Judaism around the world, the values I have learned are still important to me and my community. And while I may be far away from this place at one point, I will not lose the Jewish values that I have learned throughout my time learning in this community, and will continue to use them throughout the rest of my life, no matter where it takes me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ezra Sapadin, and today I will be speaking about my Jewish identity. Throughout my whole life, the idea of religion, and Judaism specifically, fascinated me. Originally, when I was much younger, I didn't see the point in religion. I believed that since we had the Big Bang Theory and science in general, we didn't need religion. During middle school, though, there was a central idea that kept being raised, the idea of one's Jewish identity. I never knew what it really meant to have a Jewish identity and why it was so important. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I realized how vital it was to be proud of one's Judaism. As a Jew, I often find myself thinking about the attacks that have been made on the Jewish population. The reoccurring anti-Semitic attacks, both in the US and throughout the world, are not only tragic for the people who are directly affected, but also spark fears in Jews around the world. Personally, I felt helpless, like a bystander, unable to do anything besides watch each horrific event unfold. My first response to these attacks was to hide my Judaism and live under the shield of anonymity. The Pittsburgh synagogue shooting was the earliest and most impactful attack that caused me to start thinking about my Jewish identity and my relationship with God in a different way. Instead of praying for distant, non-tangible things, I prayed for people I knew in my community and the health and safety of my friends and family. Asking God was a way for me to channel my smothered anger and confusion and allow me to think of things I could do to help not just myself, but my community. Recently, I have tried to be more aware of helping the Jewish community by volunteering at synagogue or explaining the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to someone uneducated in its history. Millions of people around the world are ignorant about Judaism. Jokes about Judaism may have seemingly unharmful consequences on the surface, but these jokes often plant the roots for anti-Semitism. In these situations, it is easy to stay quiet or to go along with it, and I am guilty of this. However, by staying quiet, you not only allow the person who said the joke to think it was okay, you indirectly let the people listening think the very same. One of the essential acts in combating anti-Semitism is education. You have to teach people that this hate speech is harmful. We as a community have an obligation to do this, to fight back, to stand up for ourselves. Because if we don't, we betray the values of our community. When one person turns on their community for the sake of themselves alone, that effect can ripple, and the consequences can be catastrophic. A community is a group of people that make decisions not only for the benefit of themselves, but also for the benefit of their peers. It was my responsibility in hearing about the anti-Semitic attacks to think about what I could do to help our community, both in the moment and in the future. Having a Jewish identity does not only mean that deep inside of you, you identify as a Jew. It requires you to show to the rest of the world that you are Jewish and are living confidently within the Jewish community. A Jewish identity requires you to identify. Identifying is the act of announcing to the world your allegiance to a specific group. Since the beginning of my adolescence, I have learned that having pride in one's Jewish identity is not a negative thing. In fact, it is quite the opposite. I have realized that being Jewish is something to celebrate. As a Jew, I feel a sense of true belonging and community. I've had the privilege of belonging to multiple synagogues, and I attend a Jewish day school, all of which have contributed to my ongoing Jewish identity. The fact that the Jewish people created the state of Israel now 74 years ago, and is now one of the most prosperous democratic countries in the world is also truly inspiring. When I was discussing the evolution of my Jewish identity with my mom, she told me that my connection to Judaism should be about more than anti-Semitism, because an identity grounded in anti-Semitism restricts your relationship with God to the bad things that are happening in the world. Your fuel for having a Jewish identity is solely based on hatred towards the Jews, and that is limiting. My mom told me this story about a professor who had been teaching a student for multiple years and saw him for the first time with a kippah. The student, without being asked, explained that he was wearing his kippah in light of the recent attacks, to show to all of the haters that he was not frightened. The professor's feelings were mixed. She was proud of his refusal to cower when faced with threats, but on the other hand, she was depressed. Only after the attacks was he prompted to identify as a Jew. Instead of being motivated by the happiness of life, he was motivated by the cruelty, and let that define his Jewish identity. This story reminded me that we shouldn't limit our affirmation of Judaism to bad times. We must affirm our Judaism in good times too. Jewish life and tradition is so rich and full of meaningful traditions and celebrations like B'nai Mitzvah, weddings, Passover, and of course, confirmation. From the Torah and all of our Jewish literature, we learn how to live a successful and joyful life. As I'm continuing with my Jewish life, I hope to take all of these important values and lessons with me. These are the ways I hope to affirm my Judaism now and in the future. Chag Shavuot Sameach.
We continue now with Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our service for the reading of Torah. We're in the middle of page 10. There is none like you, Eternal One, among the gods that are worshipped, and there are no deeds like yours. Your sovereignty is everlasting. You reign through all generations. God rules, God will reign forever and ever. Eternal God, give strength to your people. Eternal God, bless your people with peace. I invite you to rise.
El harachamim hetiva virtzonecha et Zion tivnecha mot Yerushalayim tivnecha mot Yerushalayim ki v'chavad batachnu melech ram nisa adon olamim ki mitzion tetzeh Torah ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udavar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael bikedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
You may be seated. For the blessing before the reading of Torah, I would invite all of the families of the confirmands to please rise and join us. Baruch et Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. You may be seated.
Amen. Vaydaber Elohim et kol hadabarim ha'ele lemor. Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzetecha me'eretz Mitzrayim bebeit avadim lo yehiyeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai lo ta'aseh lecha pesel v'chol tmina asher bashamayim mimal v'asher ba'aretz mitachad v'asher b'mayim mitachad la'aretz.
Lo tishtahave lachem, velo te'ovdem, ki anochi Adonai Elohecha Elkanah, poked avon avot al banim, al shlishim ve'al ribeim lesonai, ve'oseh chesed la'alafim, lo havayu leshomrei mitzvotai, lo tisa et Shem Adonai Elohecha lashav, ki lo yenakeh Adonai et asher yisa et shemo lashav. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, sheshet yamim tavod, ve'asita kol melachtecha. V'yom hashvi'i Shavat l'Adonai Elohecha, lo ta'aseh kol melacha, ata uvinha uvitecha, avdecha ve'amatecha, uvehemtecha, ve'gerecha asher bisharecha, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz et hayam v'et kol asher bam vayanach bayom hashvi'i al kein berach Adonai et yom hashabbat vayikadshehu.
Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, lema'an ya'arechun yamecha, al ha'adama, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, lo tirtzach, lo tin'af, lo tignov, lo ta'aneh b'reacha et shaker, lo ta'aneh lo tachmod beit re'echa lo tachmod eshet re'echa ve'avdo ve'amto ve'sharo ve'chamro ve'chol asher le'echa.
God spoke all these words, saying, I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image, or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or in the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, Adonai your God, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and fourth, and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the thousandth generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not swear falsely by the name of Adonai your God, for Adonai will not clear the one who swears falsely by the name.
Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Adonai your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son, or your daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth and sea, and all that is in them, and God rested on the seventh day. Therefore Adonai blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that Adonai your God is assigning to you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female slave, or his ox or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's.
I would now ask all of the families of our confirmants to please rise once more as we join together in the blessing after the reading of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. And now I invite the rest of our congregation to please rise.
Our tradition teaches us, at Sinai, Moses received the Torah and handed it down to Joshua, who handed it down to the elders, who handed it down to the prophets, who in turn handed it down to the leaders of the great assembly. And so Torah has been passed on through the generations to us. Today, we confirm its place in our lives and proudly pass this tradition on to you who represent next year's confirmation class. Embrace it as we have and study it as we have.
We who represent the confirmation class of the year 5783 are proud to accept from the class of 5782 this tradition and heritage it represents. We will embrace it as you have and study it as you have. And next year at this time, we will confirm the Torah's place in our lives, just as today you have confirmed its place in yours.
Dear friends, it is one of the greatest delights of my rabbinate to have come to know this group, to be their rabbi, and I pray always their friend. My hours with them were my favorite hours of the year. On their behalf and on my own, I want to extend a few very important thank yous to our Acting Director of Lifelong Learning, Jackie Schreiber, to our Associate Director and Teen Director, Rachel Brumberg, to my assistant, Lauren Pemberton, to Mark Heitlinger, Logan Katz, Jesus Toribio, Rob Buchwald, and our entire building team for organizing, among other things, our class photo and our rooftop reception following services to which you are invited, to Emma Kate Lindsay, our communications team member, and of course to my colleagues, Rabbis Ehrlich and Kahn, Canners Glasman and Anderson, and certainly Rabbi Sapadin, who like me is also a proud class parent. And we choreographed the moment when Ezra came down from the pulpit and Rabbi Sapadin came up to it so they could have that hug. I also want to thank our representative from next year's confirmation class, Zach Snyder. And we look forward to his participation once again next year at this time. And another thank you to our women's auxiliary, the Women of Emanu-El, which every year enhances this celebration. To represent them, I'm delighted now to call upon Dana Polikoff, who with Jackie Schreiber will present our confirmands with a few gifts and their certificate of confirmation.
Austin Colm. Miles Coven. Lena Davidson. Sarah Elbaum. Charlotte Geiling. Logan Hennis. Benjamin Lillis. Jared Merrin. Zachary Merrin. Sophia Orenstein. Jonah Pessin. Alan Razumov. Noah Santa Cruz. Ezra Sapadin. Gabriella Solmson. Lincoln Solomon.
So now a story for our confirmands based on the tales of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. And as I told you earlier last week, this is something of an unusual story. Once there was a king who had no children. So that his kingdom would not fall into the hands of strangers, he went and he sought help from doctors so that he might have an heir, but without success. Now within his land lived many Jews, and he asked the Jews to pray for him that he would have a child. So the Jews went and searched for a tzaddik, a wise man, who would pray for God to bless this king and queen with an heir. The king summoned the tzaddik to his throne room, and there the tzaddik promised the king that he would have a child within a year. And in a year's time, the queen indeed gave birth to a daughter who was as beautiful as she was brilliant. Already by the age of 4, she knew all the world's wisdoms, could play musical instruments, and spoke every language. Rulers from all the countries of the globe would travel to meet her, and the king and queen were, of course, very, very proud. But after a time, the king started to yearn for a second child. So again, he decreed upon the Jews that they should pray for him. So the Jews searched for and found another tzaddik and brought him to the throne room. The wise man asked the king, "Will you do what I tell you?" And the king responded, "Yes, anything." Then the tzaddik instructed the king, "I need you to bring me precious stones, carnelian, chrysolite, emerald, turquoise, sapphire, diamond, jacinth, agate, amethyst, beryl, lapis lazuli, and jasper." The king was bewildered, but agreed and brought the tzaddik one of each of these stones. The tzaddik, the wise man, then took the stones and ground them up into a fine powder. Then he poured a goblet of wine and placed the crushed stones inside the goblet and gave half the cup to the king to drink and the other half to the queen. Once they had finished it, he informed them that they would indeed have a second child, and this child would be made entirely of precious stones. In 9 months, the queen gave birth to a son, and the king and queen were filled with joy. But the son certainly was not made of precious stones. Still, when he was 4, he too was as beautiful as he was brilliant, and rulers the world over traveled to see him. And yet the little boy was saddened that he was not made of precious stones as the prophecy had foretold. Once, when the young prince was running in the courtyard, he fell and he cut his knee. His sister, the princess, had been caring for him, and so she bandaged the cut and brought him to his room to sleep. And he slept for days. And when the prince awoke, he was made entirely of precious stones. And that is how the story ends. It is strange, to be sure. But though Reb Nachman's tales tend to be filled with elements that are not easy to connect, their messages are often really quite simple. And in this story, one meaning is certain. Inside each of us lies something most precious. Often we may doubt it. Frequently, we are very hard on ourselves. We compare ourselves to friends and colleagues and TikTok and Instagram celebrities and don't recognize our own unique gifts and talents, which sometimes only reveal themselves in moments of challenge. Sometimes only when we have fallen down and gotten scraped a bit by life do we really realize what we're made of and the strength that lies in each one of us. And in case you haven't found it yet, let me say that within you collectively and inside each of you individually lies something most precious. Clearly, great dedication. It is no small thing to set aside the time you have these last 2, and for some of you 3, very unusual years after bar and bat mitzvah to continuing your formal Jewish learning. Thank you for making the commitment that your Judaism and your synagogue remain an important part of your extremely busy lives. And you showed us tonight that within you as well lies an understanding of the values core to who we are as Jews. First, the realization that every human being, no matter their color, their faith, their ethnicity, their means, their gender, or that of the person they love, all of us are created in God's image and are of infinite worth. Second, you appreciate and accept that each of us has a role in healing the broken places of God's creation and a responsibility to leave it more gentle and more fair for our presence in it. And certainly between unprovoked wars and unimaginable gun violence, we have our work to do. And finally, you understand that we are all accountable for how we measure up to those duties. And you proved it, all of it, tonight in your words, chanted, spoken, and sung, in your musicianship, and in your artwork, all remarkable gifts in and of themselves, collectively and individually, like the Prince, you gleam. And I hope you know that. But the story has another meaning too, because the precious stones for which the tzaddik asked were not just any precious stones. These were the 12 gemstones worn by Israel's high priest. Each of them symbolized one of Israel's 12 tribes and reminded the priest that he represented the entirety of the Jewish people, including all who had come before him. And so do you. You are here because generations of Jews in lands far and near, in ages recent and distant, also made the commitment to live and pass on our faith. You are a product of them all. And we who are your parents took into ourselves from our own parents, some of whom are here, what was precious to them. And now we are blessed to watch those ideals glisten in you. So as you can imagine, we are extraordinarily proud of you, and you should be too. We love you for who you are and for whoever you are yet to be. And in that love and pride, we would ask God's blessing upon you. Would you, as a class, please rise?
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May God bless you and watch over you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
May the light of God's face shine upon you, and may God always be gracious to you.
Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, shalom.
May God's face be turned toward you, and may God bless you with peace. Now would you all please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גאולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים.
Hello everyone, my name is Sophia Orenstein. I attended Temple Emanu-El's preschool after my baby naming, Hebrew school, and I became a bat mitzvah on January 12, 2019, exactly where I am standing now. When I was first informed that there was an option to celebrate confirmation here, I knew it was something that I needed to do. This probably isn't the best thing to say standing in a temple, but I have always had trouble finding a connection to God. Being a singer-songwriter, I've always said that music was my religion. But being 16 and the oldest in this class, my future is quickly approaching as I am now entering my junior year, which has been known to be the toughest. All of us here don't know what we're going to be or even who we are supposed to be. We are all in the process of figuring it out by learning about ourselves. The purpose of this class was to dive deeper into Judaism and learn how to apply it to ourselves and the world. I was originally going to talk about how this class relates to the world right now, but I thought I would talk about how it relates to our world, as in us kids standing up here. We have lived through a global pandemic. I myself was in 8th grade when it started, and everyone else, they were in 7th. At my commencement ceremony at school on May 27th, my friends and I were talking about our failed relationships, and I made a joke about how maybe it was because we were all mentally still in 8th grade. These past 2 years have been like a blip, like in Avengers Infinity War when everyone disappeared for 4 years and then came back and had to pretend like everything was normal. Everything was certainly not normal and still isn't. I did not think that my entire freshman year would be online or that I'd have to wear a mask for 8 hours every day during sophomore year. I also did not think that I was going to get COVID twice and one time having it land me in the hospital. Both times I got COVID, I got it really bad, and suddenly music being my religion wasn't so helpful anymore. When I was sick, I prayed, and it felt silly to do, but just the feeling of being connected to something bigger than me gave me strength. Praying shouldn't have to feel silly, but being back in confirmation class has made me feel like I'm connected to something bigger than myself, and that is my Jewish community here at Temple Emanu-El. I am proud to be standing up here as a young Jewish girl with the guidance, love, and support of everyone here. Thank you.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ.
Excuse me. Memory is both a good and bad thing. Memories can give us much joy by letting us relive very funny, wonderful, and interesting moments from our past. However, they can also make us relive sad moments that we would prefer to forget. They even manifest and amplify themselves sometimes as nightmares. But bad memories can be useful by reminding us not to make the same mistakes over and over again. Memories are always a gamble because you don't know what your brain will conjure up from your past. Sometimes, when you're sad, nothing but bad memories come to the surface, making you feel even worse, taking you to the point where you feel like you cannot take it anymore. And then your brain finds a way to bring up memories that actually can bring a smile to your face. Your memories then lift you out of your sadness. Our brains are like a stew pot full of good and bad memories, and we have no control of which ones rise up to the surface. God decides which memories we need at that moment and sends them to us to help us get by. Being Jewish has its own combination of memories throughout our history. Even though I did not live through the Holocaust, learning about it through school and talking to my relatives who lived through it, it is a horrible memory that we Jewish people all share. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the formation of the Jewish state of Israel provides all of us, the Jewish faith, with a sense of hope and pride. On a personal note, a few weeks before the world shut down, due to the pandemic, I stood in front of my family and friends at Bethel Chapel, right next door, and delivered a sermon during my bar mitzvah. Seeing pride and joy in my parents' eyes is a cherished memory that has helped me throughout my struggles over the past few years.
Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us, as we remember our dear ones who have entered into the gates of eternity. We invite those of you who are in recent mourning to please rise. And those of you who are observing a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a beloved one's passing, we invite you to rise as well. And now we rise together as one congregational family to recite the words of our Kaddish prayer, the middle of page 15.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirotei, ve'amlich malhutei, v'chayehon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman karib, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Nevarach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yiparar V'yiromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Tekudasha V'richu Le'ela Mikol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen.
We ask that the source of peace on high send peace and comfort to all of you who are in mourning, solace to all of you who are bereaved at this time. And together we say, Amen. Amen. You may be seated.
Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen.
As we wrap up the confirmation service today, I want to thank all of you for being here. I also want to thank Rabbi Davidson for sharing his knowledge, insight, and kindness with us. Confirmation was an experience I will deeply value throughout my life. Over these past few months, I have gotten to discuss Judaism and God, sometimes followed by a coffee or a walk home with old friends and newer ones alike. I have gotten to spend time with friends from nursery school who I haven't seen in years, and also develop new friendships with people who I had not yet met in the temple community. In confirmation class, we have discussed a wide-ranging array of topics, from how Albert Einstein's belief in God evolved throughout his scientific discovery to Jewish ethics in the books of the Torah. We explored the lessons the Torah and other Jewish texts hold that can help us navigate life in all its different stages and moments. Together, as a group of Jewish young adults, we dove into discussions each class, continued to learn about Judaism, and listened to each other's thoughts and contemplations. In addition to deepening our understanding of Judaism through sharing with each other, we also continue to think about who we will be and what matters to us as Jews. From this class, I've learned there's no one way to be a Jew, and there's no one way to understand Judaism. I've also been able to experience how that is part of what makes the Jewish community so special. Towards the beginning of the year, Rabbi Davidson told a story about a rabbi explaining to his son who God was. In this story, the son asked if God had any hair, and the rabbi said no. The son was very upset and even a little scared of God, which the rabbi reported to his wife. The son then later asked the rabbi's wife if God had hair, and she said, "If you want God to have hair, God can have hair." And the boy was happy. As a class, I remember discussing that we may all think of God in a different way and have varying understandings and words for discussing the deeper aspects of life. As Jews, we may all relate to Judaism in the world around us differently, and the same goes for who we are as people in general. Our lives
have all been informed by the experiences we have had in moments that have shaped our perspectives. Each perspective in our class enriched our discussions, and although we didn't always think about a topic the same way, on the most fundamental level, we connect to each other as Jews. I have always found the enduring strength and connection in the Jewish community to be very special, and as we gather here today to mark this wonderful occasion, I am once again reminded of the way we come together as a loving and strong community. May we all find and share the light and joy in Judaism.
Childhood was for fantasies, for nursery rhymes and toys. The world was much too busy to understand small girls and boys. As I grew up, I came to learn that life was not a game, that heroes were just people that we called another name. And the old shall dream dreams, and the youth shall see visions, and our hope shall rise up to the sky. We must live for today, we must build for tomorrow. Give us time, give us strength, give us life. Now I'm grown, the years have passed, I've come to understand there are choices to be made, and my life's at my command. I cannot have a future until I embrace the past. I promise to pursue the challenge, time is going fast. And the old shall dream dreams, and the youth shall see visions, and our hope shall rise up to the sky. We must live for today, we must build for tomorrow. Give us time, give us strength, give us life. Today's the day I take my stand, my future's mine to hold.